Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Sasha Ruane Borges-Hope. I'm a psychology associate with the Student Counseling Services at Iowa State University, and I'd like to welcome you to our first live workshop. This is our first run, and so we can kind of consider this to some degree like a test run. We really hope that you can find these useful even while we're not on campus, that we still have ways that we can connect with one another and that we can offer support to our students at Iowa State and our cyclones. You may see me once in a while looking over at the left screen here or to the left of the camera, or I guess it's to your right. I'm just kind of working with some of the technology here, a little bit new to it, so I'm making sure that we have all of our tech working the way that it should be, that you're able to hear me, that you're able to see our screen, and that you're able to follow along. So today's workshop is going to be about stress management during finals week. During a typical semester and a typical finals week, this is already a period of time that's kind of high stress, that you may find yourself kind of pulling all-nighters or drinking more caffeine than you normally would be, feeling more anxious, feeling more worried. And so during this period of time where we're now doing online instruction, where you may have other stressors that you're trying to manage, it's so important that during finals week that you're finding ways of being able to identify what's happening for you, what's happening in your body, that you're able to find ways to cope with that, and even that you may be able to prevent this from happening or the anxiety or the stress from kind of feeling overwhelming. So what we'll be talking about today is in fact that, is how do we manage stress during finals week. I'd like to show you just some objectives for our workshop for today. So it's understanding the signs of stress during finals week. How do we even know if we're feeling stressed out or overwhelmed? I'd like to introduce you to a few ways that you can manage stress, both preventing it as well as responding to it. And learn about some resources that we have on campus to help you manage stress as well as managing really finals week, and kind of feeling like you've got resources available to you even during this period of time where we're all either studying or working remotely. So I guess I find myself kind of thinking about how it is that finals week felt like for me when I was in school. And when you kind of look this up online, more often than not, when you look up finals week or how finals week feels, more often than not, you find images like this. Maybe feeling stressed out, feeling burnt out, maybe feeling overwhelmed with it, feeling like your entire world has just become a series of books, series of, PowerPoint presentations from classes, looking through old notes, trying to decipher your own writing, going through, things on the online Blackboard, trying to figure out how do I study for this, how do I fit all this information in, how do I meet all of these deadlines, how do I organize my time, how do I get through this in one piece. During this period of time, not only because of finals, but because of what's been going on with COVID-19 and all the steps that we've needed to take to help keep ourselves and others around us safe in social distancing, you might have noticed that your stress levels have kind of increased. But what is stress? Stress is basically your body's natural response when there's a demand on your energy, your resources. Stress is neither positive nor negative. It really is just the body's way of activating, giving you energy, giving you motivation, giving you the emotions that you need to be able to respond adequately to a given situation. We can think of it as like the 911 system or the alarm system of the body. It's the body waving a flag and saying, hey, there's something really important I need you to pay attention to. What's important to know is that we tend to experience really intense stress whenever we feel like the demands on our time, our energy, our resources far exceed what we have available to us. And that's something to just keep in mind. When we find ourselves experiencing a lot of demands on our time and energy, and it feels like it's more than what we've got available, that's where we start to experience higher levels of stress, and stress that that changes in terms of its quality because it becomes an ongoing or a sustained condition rather than just in the immediate moment. So to give you kind of an example of what this could look like, the alarm system would be really important if you were being chased by a bear. A bear is chasing you, well, your body needs to have energy and needs to send as much energy and blood and oxygen to your muscles so that you can get running. It's sending you information about how do I find safety, where do I go to be able to get away from this bear, or if you're cornered, do I fight this bear? How do I deal with this? But if it's not a bear, if it's something like an exam, the body kind of responds in much the same way. It may not be sending a whole lot of energy and blood and oxygen to your muscles per se, but your body's still activated. Stress then becomes really hard to deal with when it's not just a moment where the bear is running after you or where the exam is coming up, but where it's being sustained for a really long period of time, that we start seeing changes in the body that are much harder to deal with. And it wouldn't be surprising if during this period of time, you're noticing stress has kind of never really let up, or that stress has looked and felt a little bit different lately. So here's an example, or a nice kind of outline of how you can think about stress. So acute stress, meaning fight or flight. Acute stress takes place when that bear's in front of us, or maybe an exam is coming up, and suddenly we're feeling like, oh boy, I've really got to get to it, or I've got to find a way to deal with this. Chronic stress is what I was just referring to, which is what happens when we're experiencing stress levels that just never really seem to let up completely, so that we have this sort of sustained level of being activated all the time because there's a lot of demands on our time or energy or a lot of things that we're worried about right now. And right now in particular, that could be the case for you. Distress is the feeling or emotion that we might experience when we've been experiencing stress like regularly, or when we've been experiencing stress that is much more painful and difficult to deal with. So if we frequently feel overwhelmed by, let's say it's a lot of assignments or a lot of classes that you're taking this semester, and meeting all of those demands is feeling kind of overwhelming. It's feeling like, oh my gosh, how am I going to be able to do this? You might experience distress, meaning a level of activation that doesn't feel very pleasant, feels unpleasant, and can feel kind of more sustained frequently. Eustress, we don't often hear that word, but eustress is stress or activation of your body that you might experience that helps you perform better. So for example, if you're feeling really pumped because you're like, yeah, there's this goal that I've set for myself, I'm going to do this, I'm so excited, I know I've got a lot that I need to do, but I'm pumped up, I'm ready for this challenge. That might be eustress. You can experience eustress in preparation for an exam, for example. You could feel like, yeah, like I've studied, I'm a little bit nervous, a little anxious, but I've studied, I'm ready, let's do this, I'm going to write this exam. Or it could be something like you've set your goals for yourself, maybe with like fitness or something like that. You know, you managed to deadlift that weight that you were trying so hard to be able to do and to keep your form. And then when you finally do it, you're like, yeah, that's right, I've been really working hard at this and I've been wanting to do this. And so feeling pumped up for a challenge can be kind of a good way to think about what eustress is. If you are experiencing a ton of distress, so stress, heightened emotions, activation in your body that is unpleasant, that's associated with unpleasant experiences, maybe experiences that feel like they're far beyond, or putting demands that are far beyond your access to resources, energy, emotions, time, money, whatever the case might be. If you're experiencing a lot more distress, you might notice some of these symptoms popping up. Physically, maybe you feel really, really fatigued. Maybe you have headaches. Maybe you have muscle tension. With our emotions, we might notice that our emotions feel a little bit more unpredictable. Maybe we notice that we are more frequently having outbursts, or our emotions fluctuate more than we would expect. We find ourselves feeling irritable when maybe we wouldn't normally feel irritable or irritated by certain experiences. Sometimes we even like shut down our emotions, where emotionally we we find ourselves experiencing maybe one or two emotions all the time, whether that's nervousness, whether that's sadness, or maybe we're not feeling a whole lot. We suddenly realize like, wow, I don't feel like I don't feel anything. That can show up for you too. Cognitively, in terms of what's happening with your thinking, you might notice it's harder to learn, it's harder to remember things, it's hard to concentrate. Maybe you notice yourself zoning out, and feeling like, whoa, well, where was I for the last 10 minutes? Behaviorally, in terms of the choices that you make and how you're kind of operating in your day-to-day, you might notice yourself pulling away. You might notice yourself disengaged. You might notice yourself kind of with a lack of motivation, not feeling, whether it's the energy or the drive to do things that feel important to you. And interpersonally or in your relationships, you might notice yourself having a lot more arguments. You might notice yourself feeling like you want to be able to control things that maybe you typically wouldn't even think about controlling, but that you're feeling really frustrated that you don't have a ton of control over them. You might notice that you pull away from others. You might notice a feeling of wanting to connect with other people, but somehow it just like feels hard. These might be some signs that you're experiencing more distress than eustress in response to all the different demands on your time. Whether that's finals or whether that's a combination of things, these might be some signs that you're really struggling and that it might be time to kind of think about ways that you can care for yourself and attend to your body waving flags. So how are we going to deal with the stress of finals week? And not just the stress of finals week, but really the stress of finals week at this time in history. Because at this time in history, we're faced with a lot of stressors that just 4 or 5 months ago we weren't faced with. Or maybe those stressors have increased in their intensity. Maybe it's been feeling really lonely for you, or maybe it's been feeling crowded in your home, or maybe it's been harder to find alone time, maybe it's been harder to find support that you're needing. Being aware that something's going on in your body, that you're not feeling 100%, that you're not feeling at your best, being aware of it is really important. Sometimes we have like a threshold. We're kind of used to feeling stressed out. And so sometimes it's hard to actually name it. I know that sounds really, when I say like, we got to be aware that we're stressed out, that can sound sort of elementary or kind of simple, but sometimes it's really not, because if we've been used to handling a lot of different demands on our time and energy for a long time, whether it's managing relationships or managing, our job or managing our other responsibilities like parenting or other responsibilities like our finances or whatever the case might be, maybe we're really used to kind of a higher level of stress and distress and eustress. And so it can be hard to know when we've kind of tipped into more distress than eustress. It can be hard. So it's not actually an easy kind of first step, but it is a really important step. So if you'd like to, at this point in the workshop, it's not a bad idea to check in with yourself right now, to kind of just take a moment. Maybe you're sitting on a couch, maybe you're on your phone, maybe, wherever it is that you are, see if you can kind of just notice what your posture is like in this moment. Notice what emotions are coming up for you. Notice what's your thinking like right now. Are you noticing any aches or pains? Are you noticing yourself more drained than usual? Are you noticing yourself even struggling to attend to yourself? Maybe it's hard. Maybe you found yourself trying to really focus in on your body, and you notice, other thoughts are coming to mind. Oh, right, I've got to go. I've got this to-do list, and there's like 10 things on it just for the next hour. Maybe it's hard to attend to your body right now. But checking in with your body can be a really good place to start. It can be a good place to start just to get a sense of what your stress level is. It's also really good to try and outline, okay, well, what are the demands on my time right now? What are the things that are demanding that I'm paying attention to them? What are the things that are contributing to my level of stress? And on that list, are there some things that I need to prioritize? Are there some things that maybe I don't have to prioritize right now? And are there some things on that list that I can let go of? It's always worth asking yourself that so that you can really start to feel a little bit, more awareness about what it is that's putting demands on your time and energy, what's contributing to your stress. When we are aware, B, we can also start to feel a little bit more control over it. It doesn't mean we can control those individual situations, but what we can do is decide, okay, well, maybe I can decide what order I want to prioritize these in. Maybe I can decide which ones to put ahead of which ones. And that might change the way that you plan your day, for example. I always like to think of it this way. Family is really important to me. And there are certain people in my family who have the golden ticket, think of like Willy Wonka. But there are some people who have a golden ticket that no matter what it is that I'm facing or dealing with, if they call and they say, Sasha, I really need your support right now. This is what I'm dealing with. I'll drop what I need to do so that I can support them. Then I actually started to think, I wonder how many golden tickets I've given out. Oh, that's a lot of golden tickets. Do I need to kind of decide when to honor those golden tickets? Or are there times that I need to set a different priority? And sometimes I need to prioritize, for example, making sure that every night I'm going to bed at the same time so that I can still get my 8 hours of sleep, because I know that I function better if I have good sleep. And even though, that person with a golden ticket is calling me at like 9:30 or 10 o'clock saying, I really need your support at this very moment, maybe I don't always say yes to that request, especially when I know that I'm under stress and that I'm going to need to preserve my energy so that I can both do better in the things that really matter to me and be a better friend and family member so I can be there for them at 100% instead of being there for them in a way that's pulling away from what energies and resources I have available to me right now. That's just an example of something that you might think about in terms of what might be contributing to your stress, what priorities you have, and deciding sometimes that we need to shift around those priorities. So what are some strategies? Whether your stress feels like it is entirely related to finals week right now, whether it feels like it's related to a lot of different things going on in your life right now, or whether it feels like it's this sort of shared experience that we're all having around socially distancing and working and studying remotely, not having the same kind of contact with people we used to, and having to kind of connect in these ways that may not have been new to us, but certainly at a higher intensity. Like Skype wasn't new to me, but connecting with everybody on Skype all the time feels draining. It feels hard. So no matter where your stress feels like it's coming from, there are kind of three categories of ways that we can approach managing that stress. And I'm not saying that this means that you sweep away all the stress, you never experience stress ever again. If you didn't experience stress, I'd be really worried about you, because that means that your body is not giving you the energy you need when there are demands on your time. So I would be worried about you if you had never had stress ever again. But there are ways that we can manage stress so that it just feels like it's easier to navigate and doesn't feel like it's at a level that's dragging us down. That instead, it is our body giving us energy when we need it, rather than giving us so much energy all the time that makes us worry or makes us ruminate, makes us not be able to sleep because we're going through our to-do list at 11 o'clock at night. So there are about three categories. The first is prevention. I always, sometimes I skip over this, or I trip over it anyway, kind of emotionally, because prevention feels sometimes really hard, especially right now. I could totally understand if you're just rolling your eyes at the idea of prevention. You're like, prevention? What? Have you seen what's been going on? Absolutely, I hear you. And prevention can actually be part of the solution sometimes, even if it's not necessarily being used to actively prevent stress from showing up. It can also be used to manage stress that already exists. So while we call this prevention, these strategies can actually be useful at any time, not just prior to stress becoming distressing. Things like getting the sleep that you need, making sure you are fueling your body. The same body and brain that are doing so much for you during finals week, we need to keep that body functioning. We got to change the oil, and we got to make sure that we're okay. That was a bad idea to start with an analogy about cars, because now I've now hit the pinnacle of my car knowledge. But we got to make sure that we're maintaining our bodies. Our bodies need fuel, they need energy, they need exercise, they need sleep, and that really matters. And that can help us stave off stress, because when our bodies are working well and when they're functioning at their best, we see the best outcomes and results of our efforts. Life balance can sometimes feel a little bit difficult, especially during this time. You might be socially distancing at home with family. You might be socially distancing at home with a partner. Or you might be on your own as you're socially distancing. And each of these situations have both challenges to overcome as well as some benefits with them. You know, sometimes for someone who's living alone, it can feel really great to be able to be in control of one's environment. You get to decide when you're going to do your dishes. You get to decide, when you want quiet time. It also can be really challenging because being alone all the time doesn't necessarily feel good. And right now, being alone often really might not feel like a choice so much as kind of a requirement in order to keep yourself and others safe. Same thing goes for living in a home with family. With family can be great because you're able to connect right then and there. And sometimes that makes it hard for you to be able to prioritize other things that feel important. Maybe you need some private time. Maybe you just need some quiet time. Maybe you need undisturbed, non-distracted time, and that's harder to access. So thinking about ways that you can balance those needs, that you can balance between all the different roles that you're playing. Roles like being a student, roles like being an employee if you're working right now, roles like being a son, daughter, child, the adult child of adults, roles like being a parent, roles like being a sibling. There might be various responsibilities associated with those roles, and being able to establish a balance that for you feels like it allows you both to lean into your values, but also to set time aside so that you can regenerate, so that you can play those roles at your best possible, in your best possible way. That can be really important. And time management is so important. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Responding to stress is kind of this next category of responses. Responding to stress also means being able to recognize, okay, this is now happening for me. I am feeling distressed by my stress, not experiencing eustress, which is like energizing me. And sometimes the way that we want to adjust is by setting different boundaries around our time, reevaluating what our priorities are. Maybe we're asking for help from other people. Maybe we're finding ways of caring for ourselves. Maybe we're finding ways of regenerating. Maybe we've noticed, oh, one of the things I've always needed is making sure 3 times a week, I have a really meaningful conversation with a close friend of mine. Or maybe you know that every night at a certain time, that last hour before bed, let's say, that's a really important time for me to wind down, maybe with a good book or maybe one of your favorite TV shows. It can be guilty reality TV. That's okay too. But maybe you've noticed that there's a pattern that you haven't been able to enact during this period of time, whether because you're socially distancing or because circumstances are such that you don't have access to those resources anymore. So that can be really important as well. Just asking yourself, what is it that I need, can be really important too. What is it I need? What matters to me? What are my values? Am I living those values? Am I meeting all of those needs, whether they're creative needs, relational needs, whether it's physiological needs, whether it's comfort needs, whether it's our shelter, safety, financial needs. And that can be harder to meet sometimes. And if we're able to find other ways of meeting needs so that those needs don't just go unmet, we're able to reduce kind of the level of stress. Even when we're not able to control every aspect of it, if there are small ways in which we can control it, it can start to already feel better. And finally, this third category is about acceptance. You're probably tired of hearing about acceptance. This has kind of been a theme for the last few weeks, last month and a half, almost 2 months now. This has been a theme. What I mean by acceptance is, I'm about to use the same word in the definition, but acceptance of the things that we're not able to change. Recognizing that there's a lot in this situation, including finals week, that we don't have a lot of control over. We can't control, what decisions are being made by, various organizations we might be a part of. We may not be in positions of power there. We may not be able to control what's going on with the virus. We may not be able to control if we're being impacted, our family members are being impacted. We may not be able to control that businesses or certain businesses are closed that we would love to be able to go to because they were really important to us. There's a lot of things going on right now that we're not able to control. Maybe we can't even control our deadlines or the fact that an exam is going to be covering these chapters and not, include these chapters that we know better. A lot of this that we can't control. And acceptance is about acknowledging that when we're railing against something that we have no control over, we're actually experiencing more suffering. Suffering is pain times resistance. We're going to experience pain. It's kind of part of the experience of being alive, that we don't get the good without also experiencing the bad, or we don't get the pleasant without also experiencing things that are unpleasant. Pain's going to happen, and it's when we're resisting and railing against it in a way that is not going to create change, that we are unable to change, that's when we experience suffering. So acceptance is another way that we can deal with stress, because when we're able to acknowledge, oh, I know I've been feeling a lot of distress because all I want to be able to do is go to my class and see my classmates, or all I want to be able to do is go to that club where I had really important relationships with people, or all I want to be able to do is to travel back home, wherever home may be. All I want to do is do that. But there are all these factors that make that impossible right now. When we're railing against that, we sit in rumination, we sit in preoccupation and in worry and frustration, and there may not be anything that we can do with those emotions at that time. And the reason your body's creating those emotions is because it's trying to help you deal with the situation. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes our best response is to say, okay, I gotta let go of this rope, because on the other end is just going to be this cement wall, and I can't move that right now. Stress during finals week specifically. I want to get real specific about ways that we can cope with finals week, so that you've got some strategies right there that you can think about, ways that you can incorporate this into your experience. Number one, start early. It is currently the 29th, so maybe start early would have been really useful a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I get it. We're working on it. Hopefully we can make use of this presentation again in coming semesters and kind of be able to roll this out a little bit sooner next time. But starting early can really help us, whether it's with finals week or whether it's with another period of time or another set of due dates that you know are going to be coming up related to school or not. Starting early always helps, because that helps us spread out the amount of work and the intensity of work each time we're sitting down to focus on that to-do list or focus on those due dates. I had a professor once tell me that, the best way to kind of plan out your time is to just assume that the estimation you have in your head of how long something is going to take, just multiply that by 3. It may not always hit the 3 times as long as you think it's going to take. It may not always hit that, but it often actually does. Sometimes we underestimate how much time a project is going to take or how much time we're going to need to dedicate to something. And when we overestimate it, or when we just multiply that by 3, it's a small step, but it can really change the way that we're scheduling things out and planning things. The second is actually, I just made reference to that, is scheduling. Schedule your time to study or schedule your time to write those finals. When you're able to set aside time and have a structure in place, that can really change things. Suddenly you're now accountable to a schedule that you have designed for yourself, granted based on due dates that maybe you didn't have as much control over, but you're setting a schedule for yourself to keep yourself accountable and to also be able to build in time to do other things. I certainly hope that you're able to make time in a day where you've got like an hour, maybe even two, to do things that are just for fun, that are not about feeding your body, although that's really important. I hope that's built in there too, but not about all the responsibilities, but are also just like really good for your soul. Maybe one of the things that you really enjoy doing that helps you feel rejuvenated, regenerated, something creative. Maybe you want to set aside an hour or two every day or once a week or whatever works for you, where you know, that thing I really enjoy doing, I'm going to make sure I schedule that in. So it's not just about scheduling study time and schoolwork time, but also scheduling time to do things that matter to you, that are valuable to you, that you really enjoy, and that are priorities. Schedule infrequent breaks too. Sitting down for 6 hours straight and just trying to read through a book, I would just go cross-eyed. It's really hard to stay completely focused for 6 hours at a time. An hour and a half, every hour and a half or so, you want to give yourself like 10 minutes. 10 minutes to walk around, make yourself a tea. Maybe you watch, there's that new service like Quibi, I think it is, that they do like 10-minute episodes. Maybe that's your option or something like that. Or maybe, it's a Parks and Rec episode that's 25 minutes, and so you can watch it over a period of 6 hours just during your breaks. You could theoretically do that. But make sure you're scheduling in breaks where you're able to disengage from the material, you're able to stretch, move your body a little bit, get reconnected with things, people, and activities around you that feel important and useful. Location. You want, if you can, and if you have that option available to you, you want to establish a study space that's separate from other things in your life. Studying on your bed can be a really, really tricky game. Studying in your bed, you can either find yourself falling asleep when you're studying, and then, an hour or two later, you wake up from your nap and you think, oh gosh, there was all this time that I had scheduled for studying, and now I just slept through it. And that can kind of then mess with your circadian rhythm too. But studying on your bed can also mean that you start to associate your bed with, the anxiety of learning, with the activation of learning. And then that can make bed a lot less fun. So it's important that you establish a study space that feels right for you. For some people, a little bit of ambient noise helps. So whether that ambient noise is hearing your roommates in the other room, whether that ambient noise is just having some music playing while you're reading and writing, or whether that ambient noise is just like opening a window and you can kind of hear people outside. So that helps for some people. And for some people, like complete silence is really what helps. I had a roommate back in college who had noise-canceling headphones as a way to help meet that need for her. She just really needed the quiet so that she could be able to study and do her best work. So recognizing what works for you in your environment. It's also important to establish those boundaries with people around you. Maybe there's a place in particular where you won't be disturbed or you won't be interrupted. Or maybe you need to have those conversations with people and ask them for what it is that you're needing. Whether that's a sign on your door saying, hey, I'm studying right now, check in with me at this time, or I'll be out at this time. Or whether it's just asking friends and family, hey, I'm going to be studying for the next couple of hours. If you don't mind not disturbing me until then. That could be a way of doing it too. But if you're able to get away from your bed, that's great. If you've got a desk, even better. You can also make use of lap desks if you've only got a chair or a couch available to you. That's okay, as long as you're not associating your study space with the place where you play or the place where you would want to be able to sleep. Prioritizing sleep is really, really important. After 1 week of 6 hours of sleep per night, you already start to experience some deficits in your thinking and learning. It impacts your ability to recall information. 8 hours is serious because even 6 hours starts to impact your ability to learn and recall. So really, if you hear only one thing from today's presentation, I really hope it's that you hear sleep is really, really important. And pulling all-nighters, I did it too. Pulling all-nighters can sometimes feel really necessary. And if there are ways that you can limit that, avoid that, I'd strongly encourage you to prioritize 8 hours of sleep. fueling your body, hydrating your body. Your body and your brain are doing so much for you throughout your day. Have those 3 meals a day. Make that break in the day so that you can fuel your body. It's so important. Your body starts to respond differently when it's not getting food. You're not necessarily learning in the same way you normally would. And so, I know that for some people, they can talk about the experience of when they're feeling full, they start to feel tired, or they find that they are kind of wind down a little bit more, start to feel a bit more fatigue and not the energy that they need. And that might be possible too, that you maybe that's some part of your experience too, and yet skipping meals during this period of time is much more likely to actually pull energy away from your ability to learn and retain information, because now that energy and those resources are being put towards keeping your organs and your body alive. So keep fueling your body, hydrate your body. Your body and your brain really, really need that to be able to perform your best. Try to avoid rabbit holes and spiraling and time sucks, things like YouTube spirals or social networking, gaming, as much as you can. If you want to make those rewards for having spent the time that you decided to dedicate to studying, having achieved that and then using that as a reward, by all means. I'm a gamer too. I really enjoy gaming, and I wouldn't want to just go through a whole finals week without ever touching my system. And sometimes when we prioritize that over doing the other things that we value, that would help us in our career long term, or that would help us with our transcripts, or whatever the case might be, whatever your reasons for studying are, it can also pull away from something that feels really important to us, and it can end up increasing our stress levels. So making use of it as a reward at the end of your evening, sure. But, we've all been there. Maybe you watched a video that a friend recommended of a really cute kitten who's best friends with a llama or something like that, and 3 hours later you find yourself watching a documentary about robotics, or who knows, and you suddenly realize, oh my god, I didn't know how interesting this was. And I've been there, but those 3 hours can very quickly take away your motivation. It can start to make you feel guilty or feel bad about it, and it can definitely take away from the value that you're placing on your education in that moment. So trying to avoid that as much as possible can be really important. If that means turning off your Wi-Fi while you're studying, that might be one way to do it. And whether that's asking a friend to help keep you accountable. You can ask a friend, hey, would you mind just checking in with me and double checking if I'm studying? That's okay too. Sometimes you have a study buddy that helps kind of keep you accountable, just like you're helping to keep them accountable, not because you're necessarily studying the same thing, but because you're both needing to study or write papers at the same time. That can be useful. I kind of made reference to this earlier. You might notice that your inner critic has gotten really loud. When we spend a lot of time alone, especially, our inner critic tends to get a lot louder. Maybe it says things like, you're never going to be able to do this, or there's no point in studying now, or even if you do it, you're going to fail. You should have done this earlier, or you shouldn't have gone down that YouTube spiral. Your inner critic is going to be saying all sorts of things to you, and it's going to be really harsh with you. And I wouldn't be surprised if right about now it's really, really loud. Challenge that inner critic. Just know when we're socially distancing and we don't have as much contact with people, that inner critic is already louder. So if you're able to recognize that and just put your finger on it and say, oh, that might be part of the reason that I've been so hard on myself lately, or that might be part of the reason that I've been feeling so much more guilt than usual, or maybe it's feelings of shame. If you're able to put your finger on it, you can actually start to make different choices about how you want to respond. Just because that voice is getting louder or speaking up more frequently, maybe it's getting meaner, doesn't mean you can't talk back. Sometimes what we need to say to that voice is, okay, I know why I'm being really hard on myself right now. I've been alone for a really long period of time. I'm feeling worried about how I'm going to perform on finals, or maybe I'm feeling worried about a lot of things that are going on in my life right now. So my brain is just practicing what it always does with its self-critic, and it's telling me that I'm not going to be able to do things. One, just because that's what it's saying doesn't mean it's true. Two, just because it's saying that I'm not going to be able to do something doesn't mean that I've got to listen to it or that I can't talk back. And sometimes telling ourselves, I can do this. Here are all the ways in the past that I've overcome challenges, or here are all the achievements in the past that I'm feeling really good about. Sometimes doing that can help quiet that inner critic. We may not be able to completely shut it up. Sometimes we can and sometimes we can't. Sometimes we can just turn down the volume a little bit, or maybe we can start a dialogue with it. But thinking about all the times that you've overcome, that you have found ways to achieve what you set your mind to, can be really important. And then finally, reach out. This period of time, I know you're hearing a lot of messages around, we got to socially distance, but also don't forget to connect with people. Sometimes it can start to feel a little repetitive, or it can start to feel like, yeah, I know, I'm supposed to reach out. And I really want to reiterate it because you are not alone in this. You are not alone, whether it's in your experience of social distancing, whether it's in the uncertainty about what's coming next, whether it's that right now you are feeling really planted in finals and you're like, oh my God, I just have to get through finals, forget about the rest of it. I guarantee that there are peers and people around you who are experiencing something probably really, really similar. Reaching out to people that you trust, people that you've been able to turn to in the past, your support system, your support network. But I also, reaching out to them is going to be really important, and I think it's just important just for your well-being. But I also want you to be thinking about reaching out when you're feeling uncertain. Maybe the reason that you're kind of feeling some anxiety in a moment, for example, is that you're reading a topic and you're like, oh my God, I don't even remember learning any of this. When did we go over this topic? And you're feeling really confused and you're feeling overwhelmed. Ask for support from your TA, from your professor, maybe your colleagues in the same class. Ask for help. Reach out, not just if you're needing some connection and some interaction, but also reach out if you're finding like, whoa, I'm feeling overwhelmed with this particular topic. Sometimes you can get a really simple explanation that you're like, oh, right. Wait, now I'm connecting the dots. I remember thinking about this or learning about this. Right, that was connected to this chapter. Okay, now I got it. Sometimes the answer you get is, oh, actually, we're not going to be tested on that. Oh, thank goodness. Or the answer that you get really helps put it into perspective, or you remember, or you're learning it really well and differently than maybe that first time around that you were exposed to it, or maybe you weren't exposed to it. But reaching out can be really, really useful. There are other resources on campus as well that I want you to be aware of. Student counseling services. We may not be on campus, but we are still here. Give us a call. We are open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. In the coming weeks, look out on our channel, look out for us on Facebook for some updates, look on our website for some updates. We've got some really exciting changes coming forward with services, but we are still here, so reach out via phone and we can get you connected to some support services. We also have our crisis support available as well. If you're feeling that you are not able to keep yourself or others safe, give us a call, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. If it is after hours, you'll see that in the description down below. If it is after hours and you are worried about your safety, you can keep in mind the ISU crisis text line, ISU PD, or in your neighborhood, if you're not in Ames right now, you can always call 911, make use of the local emergency room if you are concerned about your safety or being able to keep others safe. In terms of academic resources and resources during finals week, the Academic Success Center is open. Their doors are not currently open, but they are available. They're doing a lot of different virtual services right now. Send them an email. Best way to get a hold of them and find out about what services are available is to send them an email, and you'll see that on your screen. Student assistants, Dean of Students, they're a great hub for any challenge you might be experiencing. Maybe during finals week you're realizing there's a course that maybe you need to drop that course, or maybe you need to transition into a different program, or whatever the case might be, or maybe there's a challenge that you're having with a professor. Dean of Students, Students Assistants, they are a really great place to start for any challenge you might be experiencing on campus, because they're also a hub that will get you connected to other services depending on kind of what it is that you might be facing. I want you also to know that there are some resources available online. So there's a link there for PMR, so PMR meaning progressive muscle relaxation. This is a way that you can help your body and your mind relax when you're feeling overwhelmed. Belly breathing, there's so many different kinds of deep breathing, so I just want to say there are a lot of resources out there. These are not the only ones available. There's just some that we're familiar with. Belly breathing is another really great way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So the 911 or the alarm system in your body is the sympathetic nervous system. That's the one that turns on all the alarms and says, hey, we got to deal with this thing. The parasympathetic nervous system is a system that says, okay, false alarm, we can turn the alarms down. The parasympathetic nervous system is what we're activating when we're doing something like belly breathing or deep breathing. What we're doing is we're telling our body, hey, I know the alarms are on right now, but we're okay. So you're letting your body know that was a false alarm. Self-compassion is a way of being kind to yourself. That inner critic that might be chatting up a storm right now, that inner critic can get real quiet when we practice self-compassion. Self-compassion is essentially showing the compassion you might show other people when they're going through a hard time to yourself. So we might tell someone who's going through a really hard time, I'm so sorry you're going through that. You didn't deserve that experience, or you have the strength to be able to get through this. I've seen you. I've seen these qualities in you. I know you can do this. It's just being able to turn that inward. And mindful self-compassion would be practicing some mindfulness as we're practicing self-compassion. And I believe that particular one has some like meditations that can be really useful. There's also some mobile apps that help you do this. I really like Stop, Think, and Breathe. Oh, I thought I had added it to this page. I guess I didn't. Stop, Think, and Breathe is a really nice one, and it's free to use. You can, if you want to, get a subscription for some of the premium features, but they have really great free features where you basically, when you open up the app, you click on an indicator as to how you're feeling in that moment, and then they present several different options of meditations that you can listen to that can help you kind of cope in the moment. That's it for me for today. Keep checking in on this page, our channel on YouTube. We're continuing to add videos. I believe we're releasing them every day. Look out for more live workshops. We're kind of continuing to find new and creative ways to be able to support you, to connect with you. So keep checking back in, because we're going to put our updates and our announcements everywhere that we can, and sometimes it's just easy to come right to this channel and just see how things are going. Feel free to subscribe and to ask for notifications from this channel. That can be another way to know when we go live, and we'll do our best to make live feeds available for other times, or at least to have the information available in different ways, like in one of our other videos. In the meantime, good luck with finals week. Good luck with continuing to manage these really challenging, unprecedented times. This is a really hard time to be a student. It's a really hard time to be transitioning into a summer semester if you're going to be taking classes, transitioning into a summer where things might look really different than they might typically look, or transitioning into your job search, or transitioning from an undergrad program to a grad program. Whatever your next steps are, this is a really, really hard time to be facing that. And finals week, it wouldn't surprise me, finals week is making it even harder to manage. But know that you are not alone, that we are here with you. We are at home here with you. Reach out if you're needing any support. We're happy to answer questions and support you throughout this process. And just know that we will continue to find new and creative ways to support you. So keep checking back in. Bye all.